fun. Being the son of a wealthy businessman, he never had to worry about money, rules, or consequences. Wherever he went, he acted like the world belonged to him. This trip was no different. He was here with his friends, and all they cared about was having a good time. The city of London was busy and full of life. People rushed from one place to another, while tourists stopped to take pictures of the famous landmarks. Logan and his friends walked down the streets, dressed in expensive clothes, laughing loudly as if they owned the place. "This place is too serious," Logan said, looking around. "People here need to learn how to have fun." His friends laughed, agreeing with him. They weren't interested in history or traditions. They just wanted to do something exciting, something that would get people's attention. That's when Logan's eyes landed on the royal guards standing outside Buckingham Palace. Dressed in their red uniforms with tall black hats, the guards stood perfectly still, their faces expressionless. No matter what happened around them, they didn't react. It was part of their training, part of their discipline. Tourists gathered around, taking pictures and admiring their ability to remain unmoved. Logan smirked. "I bet I can make them move." His friends looked at him, curious. "How?" one of them asked. "Watch and learn," Logan replied. They walked closer to the guards, standing among the crowd. Logan started making funny faces at one of them. He waved his hands, clapped loudly, even pretended to trip in front of the guard. But the guard didn't react. He stood as still as a statue, his eyes focused straight ahead. The crowd chuckled at Logan's silly attempts, but no one took him seriously. Many tourists had tried the same thing before, and the guards never moved. But Logan wasn't the type to give up easily. He didn't like being ignored. He wanted to do something that no one would forget. Then, an idea popped into his head. "Wait here," he told his friends, running off to a nearby shop. A few minutes later, he returned, holding a can of bright red paint in his hand. His friends' eyes widened. "No way," one of them whispered. "Oh yes," Logan said with a mischievous grin. "This will definitely get a reaction." His friends pulled out their phones, ready to record. Logan took a deep breath, stepped forward, and before anyone could stop him, he lifted the can and poured the paint all over the guard's uniform. The crowd gasped in shock. A few people screamed. Logan took a step back, laughing. The guard, however, did not move. He remained still, his face unreadable, even as the thick red paint dripped down his uniform. For a moment, Logan thought it was hilarious. But then, he noticed something he hadn't expected. The other guards had moved. One of them stepped forward, signaling to security. In less than a second, officers rushed toward him. The laughter stopped. "What's going on?" Logan asked, suddenly feeling uneasy. "You just made a huge mistake," someone in the crowd said. Before Logan could react, two strong hands grabbed him from behind. He struggled, but there was no escape. As he was dragged away, the weight of what he had done started to sink in. This wasn't just a harmless prank. This was something serious. And for the first time in his life, Logan realized that money and privilege wouldn't be able to save him from what was coming next. Logan's heart pounded as the officers dragged him away from Buckingham Palace. His friends, who had been laughing moments ago, quickly disappeared into the crowd, too afraid to be involved. The shocked whispers of tourists filled the air as people pointed at him, their faces a mix of disbelief and anger. "This is a misunderstanding," Logan protested, struggling against the officers' grip. "It was just a joke." But the officers didn't respond. They remained silent and professional, their faces unreadable. Logan could feel his confidence slipping away. He had always believed that no matter what he did, he could talk his way out of trouble. This time, however, something felt different. They reached a police van parked nearby, and the doors swung open. Logan was pushed inside, the cold metal of the seat sending a chill down his spine. The doors slammed shut, locking him in. For the first time, he felt trapped. The van started moving, and Logan stared out the small window, watching the palace grow smaller in the distance. His mind raced. He had poured paint on a guard. That wasn't a big deal, right? It would wash off. Why was everyone acting like he had committed a serious crime? The ride felt long, but soon the van arrived at a police station. The doors opened, and the officers led him inside. The station was busy. Phones rang. Officers walked back and forth, and people sat on benches, waiting. Logan was taken to a desk where an officer, older and more serious-looking, sat waiting. Logan stepped off the plane with a wide grin on his face. London was his latest stop in a long list of countries he had visited just for. "Name?" the officer asked. Logan swallowed. "Logan Carter." The officer typed something into the computer. "Do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?" Logan forced a smirk, trying to act unfazed. "It was just a joke. I'll pay for the uniform if that's the problem." The officer looked up, his expression hard. "This isn't about money. You didn't just ruin a uniform. You disrespected a royal guard, an official military member serving under the king's command. That is an offense." Logan's stomach twisted. "Wait, you mean like an actual crime?" "Yes," the officer said firmly. "A serious one." Logan's smirk vanished. He had always thought of himself as untouchable. He had pulled pranks before, on teachers, security guards, even hotel staff, and had never faced real consequences. But now it seemed different. Another officer walked in and placed a file on the desk. "The video is all over the internet," he said. "People are furious." Logan's eyes widened. "What video?" The officer turned a monitor toward him, pressing play. The screen showed the exact moment when Logan poured the red paint over the guard. The bright colors stood out against the guard's motionless form. The video then cut to Logan laughing while the crowd gasped. The views on the video were skyrocketing. Thousands of comments filled the screen, most of them angry. "Disgusting behavior. No respect at all. He should be banned from ever entering the UK again. That guard showed more discipline in 1 second than this guy has in his entire life." Logan felt a cold sweat on his forehead. He had always enjoyed attention, but this was different. This wasn't admiration. It was outrage. The officer sighed. "You will be formally charged. You may contact a lawyer." Logan's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone and dialed his father's number. The call rang, then connected. "Dad," Logan said quickly, his voice shaking. "I need your help. It's bad." There was a long silence on the other end before his father spoke, his voice unusually cold. "I saw the video, Logan." Logan's breath caught in his throat. His father always fixed his problems, but this time, something in his voice told him this wouldn't be so easy. Logan gripped his phone tightly, his heart pounding in his chest. His father had always been his safety net, the one person who could make problems disappear with a single phone call. But this time, the silence on the other end felt different. "I saw the video, Logan," his father repeated, his voice cold and distant. Logan swallowed hard. "Dad, it was just a joke. The media is overreacting. Can you talk to someone? Get me out of this." His father sighed heavily. "Logan, do you have any idea what you've done?" Logan felt his throat tighten. He didn't understand why his father was acting this way. It wasn't like he had hurt anyone. It was just paint. He had been in trouble before, but his father had always managed to fix it. "I'll pay for the damages," Logan said quickly. "I'll apologize. Whatever they want." His father's voice remained cold. "It's not that simple, Logan. You disrespected an institution that has stood for centuries. The royal guards are not just people in costumes. They represent the monarchy, the country's history, and its values. What you did wasn't just foolish. It was insulting to an entire nation." Logan felt a lump in his throat. "So what? They're really going to put me in jail for this?" His father didn't answer right away. "The embassy has already contacted me. They said you're facing charges. You'll have to appear in court. and there's nothing I can do to stop that." Logan's stomach dropped. Court. He had never even stepped inside a courtroom before. "Dad, please." His father cut him off. "I warned you, Logan. I told you that your reckless behavior would catch up to you one day. You thought the world would always clean up your mess. Well, not this time." Logan could barely breathe. "So you're just going to leave me here?" "I'll arrange for a lawyer," his father said. "But that's it. You need to face the consequences of your actions. I won't be fixing this for you." The call ended. Logan stared at his phone in shock. His father had never spoken to him like that before. He had always been strict, but in the end, he always made things right. But now, for the first time, Logan was on his own. A police officer tapped the desk in front of him. "Time's up. Let's go." Logan was led to a small holding cell. The walls were gray, the air thick and stale. The metal bench was cold against his skin as he sat down, his head in his hands. He thought about his friends. None of them had called or texted. They had been laughing with him before, but now, when things had gone wrong, they had disappeared. He had always believed that being rich and popular meant he was untouchable. But now, sitting in a police cell, he realized how alone he truly was. Hours passed. The reality of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just a joke anymore. He was in real trouble. The internet was tearing him apart, calling him disrespectful, arrogant, and entitled. Even strangers who had never met him hated him. A lawyer finally arrived, a serious-looking woman in a dark suit. She sat across from him, her expression unreadable. "Logan Carter," she said, opening a file. "You are being charged with public disorder and defacing a military uniform. You could be fined heavily, or worse, face jail time." Logan's breath caught in his throat. Jail? No, that couldn't happen. He leaned forward desperately. "There has to be a way out of this." The lawyer met his gaze. "That depends on how seriously you take this situation." For the first time in his life, Logan understood. His actions had consequences, and this time, there was no escape. Logan sat in the small, cold room, staring at the table in front of him. His hands were shaking, and his heart felt heavy in his chest. The lawyer sat across from him, flipping through the file that held all the details of his case. He wanted to believe that this was all just a bad dream, that he would wake up and everything would be fine. But deep down, he knew this was real. The lawyer cleared her throat and looked at him seriously. "Logan, I need you to listen carefully. The charges against you are not minor. Pouring paint on a royal guard is considered a serious offense. The public outrage is making things worse. The video of your actions has gone viral, and people all over the world are talking about it." Logan swallowed hard. "But it was just paint. I didn't hurt anyone." The lawyer shook her head. "It's not just about the paint. It's about what the royal guards represent. They are part of the military, and their discipline and dedication are highly respected. You didn't just ruin a uniform, you disrespected an entire tradition. The court won't see this as a simple prank. They will see it as an act of public disorder and disrespect toward the monarchy." Logan's stomach twisted. He had never thought about it that way. To him, it had been a joke, something to make his friends laugh. But now, he realized that to everyone else, it was much bigger than that. The lawyer continued, her voice firm. "You are facing a serious fine, possible community service, and in the worst case, jail time. If you don't take this seriously, things could go very badly for you." Logan's mind raced. Jail. He had never even considered that possibility. His father had always bailed him out of trouble before, but this time, there was no easy escape. He leaned forward, his voice desperate. "What do I do? How do I fix this?" The lawyer sighed. "First, you need to show genuine remorse. The court won't be kind to you if you act like this is just an inconvenience. You need to apologize, not just privately, but publicly. And you have to mean it." Logan nodded quickly. "Fine, I'll apologize. I'll say whatever they want me to say. The lawyer's eyes narrowed. That's not enough. People can tell when an apology is fake. If you don't actually understand why what you did was wrong, no one will believe you. Right now, the public sees you as a spoiled, arrogant tourist who thinks he's above the rules. If you want a chance at fixing this, you need to prove them wrong. Logan felt anger rise inside him, but he forced himself to stay quiet. He had never had to care about what people thought before. But now, their opinions could decide his future. The lawyer stood up. Your court hearing is in 2 days. I suggest you spend that time thinking about what you're going to say. If the judge sees that you have learned something from this, it might help your case. She turned to leave, but then she paused. One more thing, Logan. Your father won't be attending the hearing. He said you need to handle this on your own. Logan felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. His father had always been there, always fixed things. But now he was truly alone. As the door closed behind the lawyer, Logan buried his face in his hands. He had never been so scared in his life. For the first time, he realized that his actions had real consequences. And this time, there was no one to save him but himself. You said. Logan sat alone in his holding cell, staring at the gray walls. He had never felt so helpless before. His father wasn't coming to save him. His friends had abandoned him. The internet was tearing him apart. He was completely alone, and for the first time in his life, there was no easy way out. He thought back to the moment he poured the paint on the Royal Guard. At the time, it had seemed funny. But now, he could see the moment from a different perspective. The guard had stood there, completely still, not reacting even as the paint ruined his uniform. That kind of discipline was something Logan had never had. He had always done whatever he wanted, without thinking about how it affected others. The next morning, an officer unlocked his cell and led him to a small meeting room. His lawyer was waiting for him, along with another man in a military uniform. Logan sat down nervously, unsure of what was about to happen. The military officer spoke first. My name is Captain Edwards. I serve in the Royal Guard. I was assigned to handle your case personally. His voice was calm but firm, and Logan could tell he was someone who took his duty very seriously. I've read about you, Logan Carter, Captain Edwards continued. I know that you come from a wealthy family, that you've traveled the world, and that you've never faced real consequences for your actions. But things are different now, aren't they? Logan swallowed hard and nodded. He didn't dare say anything. Captain Edwards leaned forward. Do you know the history of the Royal Guard? Logan shook his head. The Royal Guard is not just for show, the captain explained. We are highly trained soldiers. We protect the monarchy, and we serve our country with honor. The guard you poured paint on stood still because he was following his training. No matter what happens, a Royal Guard does not react unless there is a direct threat. Logan lowered his head. He felt ashamed. He had assumed they were just decorations for tourists to laugh at, but now he understood that they were real soldiers with real responsibilities. Captain Edwards continued. That man you humiliated has served his country for years. He has stood in freezing cold, in the burning sun, in the pouring rain, all without breaking discipline. And you thought it would be funny to test him. Logan couldn't meet his eyes. I didn't think about it that way, he admitted. I wanted to make my friends laugh. Captain Edwards studied him for a long moment. And do you still think it was funny? Logan shook his head. No, it was stupid and disrespectful. The captain nodded. I believe that you are starting to understand. But understanding is not enough. You need to make this right. Logan looked up. How? The lawyer, who had been silent until now, spoke. There is an option, Logan. Instead of jail time, the court might consider an alternative punishment. You would have to complete mandatory community service and issue a public apology. Logan felt a spark of hope. Community service? Like what? Captain Edwards answered. You would be required to work with military veterans, assist in maintaining public spaces, and learn about the history of the Royal Guard. You need to see what true discipline and responsibility look like. Logan thought about it. He had never done hard work before. The idea of cleaning, helping, and following strict rules made him uncomfortable. But at the same time, it was better than going to jail. "I'll do it," he said firmly. Captain Edwards nodded. "Then let's see if you're ready to prove that your apology is more than just words." Logan knew this wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he was willing to face the consequences of his actions and finally start changing. Logan stood outside the community service center early in the morning, feeling completely out of place. He had never woken up this early for anything other than flights to luxury vacations. Now he was dressed in plain work clothes, about to start a punishment he had never imagined for himself. An older man in a military jacket approached him. His posture was straight, his face serious, and his eyes sharp. "Logan Carter." Logan nodded. "I'm Sergeant Harris. You'll be working under me for the next few weeks. You'll follow my instructions, and you won't complain." "Understood." Logan hesitated, then nodded again. "Understood." Sergeant Harris gave him a mop. "Good. Start by cleaning the floors inside. And don't miss a spot." Logan's mouth almost dropped open. Cleaning floors? He had never cleaned anything in his life. At home, there were maids for that. But when he looked at Sergeant Harris, he knew arguing wouldn't help. Sighing, he walked inside and dipped the mop into the bucket. The floor was large, and the work was slow and tiring. His arms ached after just 20 minutes, and he had to fight the urge to quit. As he worked, he noticed other people in the building, men and women of different ages, some wearing military uniforms, others in simple clothes like his. Some were in wheelchairs, others had prosthetic legs or arms. He realized these were veterans, people who had served their country. One of them, an older man with a cane, watched him with curiosity. Not used to hard work. Logan forced a smile. "Not really." The man chuckled. "I figured. But hard work builds character. You'll learn." For the first time, Logan didn't feel defensive. Maybe the man was right. Maybe this was something he needed. The next few days were exhausting. Logan was assigned different tasks: cleaning windows, scrubbing bathrooms, and even helping in the kitchen. His body ached, and his hands, which had only ever held expensive watches and designer bags, were now rough and sore. But something strange was happening. He was beginning to feel a sense of accomplishment. Each time he finished a task, he felt proud. No one was handing him anything. He was earning it. One afternoon, Sergeant Harris called him outside. "Come with me," he said. Logan followed him to a large hall where a group of veterans sat in chairs, some chatting, others quietly listening to a speaker. Sergeant Harris gestured for Logan to sit. A man in a Royal Guard uniform stood in front of the group. Logan's stomach twisted. He recognized him. It was the very guard he had poured paint on. The room fell silent as the guard spoke. "A few weeks ago, I was the subject of a public humiliation. A young man thought it would be amusing to test my discipline, to see if he could break me. He did not succeed." Logan lowered his head, ashamed. But what he did not understand was the meaning behind our duty. We serve with honor, not because we have to, but because we choose to. We stand, no matter what, because we represent something greater than ourselves. The guard then turned his eyes toward Logan. "That young man is here today. He has taken his first steps toward understanding responsibility." Logan's heart pounded. He wasn't sure if the guard was angry or if he was offering a chance at redemption. Sergeant Harris leaned in and whispered, "Tomorrow, you will stand in front of everyone and apologize. Make sure you mean it." Logan nodded, his throat dry. Tomorrow, he would have to face the people he had disrespected. And for the first time, he wanted to make things right. The next morning, Logan stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his plain work shirt. His heart pounded in his chest. Today was the day he had to stand in front of everyone and apologize. He had given public speeches before, at fancy events, in front of wealthy guests who clapped at his words even when he didn't mean them. But this was different. This time, people weren't here to praise him. They were here to see if he had truly changed. Sergeant Harris knocked on the door. "It's time." Logan took a deep breath and followed him to the large hall. As he stepped inside, he saw rows of veterans, officers and volunteers sitting in silence. The Royal Guard he had humiliated stood at the front, watching him with unreadable eyes. Logan walked up to the microphone. His hands were sweaty, and his throat was dry, but he knew this moment was important. He couldn't mess it up. He took a deep breath and began. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry." His voice was shaky, but he forced himself to continue. "A few weeks ago, I did something disrespectful. I thought it was funny to pour paint on a Royal Guard without thinking about what it meant. At the time, I didn't understand what the Royal Guard stood for. I didn't understand their discipline, their service, or their sacrifice." The room was silent. No one interrupted, but Logan could feel their eyes on him. "I grew up thinking that my actions didn't have consequences," he admitted. "I believed that money and status would protect me from everything. But I was wrong. I disrespected something important, and I hurt people with my actions." He turned toward the Royal Guard. "To you, I owe the biggest apology. You stood there, following your duty, while I treated you like a joke. You showed more strength that day than I ever have in my whole life. I was arrogant, and I was wrong." The guard didn't react, but something in his eyes softened slightly. Logan looked back at the audience. "I've spent the last few weeks doing things I never thought I'd do. Cleaning floors, scrubbing bathrooms, working with veterans. And in that time, I learned something important. Respect isn't about money. It isn't about power. It's about understanding others and valuing their experiences." He took a deep breath. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I promise that from now on, I will do better. I will be better." For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then one person clapped, then another, and soon the entire room was applauding. Logan felt his chest tighten. It wasn't the kind of applause he was used to. It wasn't forced or fake. It was real. Sergeant Harris stepped forward, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "That was a good start, Logan. Now let's see if you can keep proving it." Logan nodded. He wasn't done yet, but for the first time in his life, he was ready to walk the right path. Logan woke up the next morning feeling lighter than he had in weeks. His public apology had been the hardest thing he had ever done, but it was also the most honest. For the first time, he had spoken from his heart, not just said what people wanted to hear. But he knew that words weren't enough. Now he had to prove that he had truly changed. Sergeant Harris greeted him outside. "You did well yesterday, Logan, but don't think your work is over. Respect isn't earned in one speech. It's earned through actions." Logan nodded. "I understand. What's next?" Sergeant Harris handed him a list of tasks. "You'll continue your community service for another few weeks, but today you're going somewhere special." Logan looked at the paper. His next assignment was at a rehabilitation center for injured soldiers. His stomach tightened. He had spent time around veterans over the past few weeks, but now he would be working directly with those who had sacrificed their health for their country. When he arrived at the center, he was introduced to Mr. Thompson, a former soldier who had lost his leg in service. The older man had a strong presence, but his eyes were kind. "So, you're the rich kid who learned a lesson," Mr. Thompson said with a chuckle. Logan scratched the back of his head. "I guess you could say that." Mr. Thompson gestured to the side. "See those weights? Help me with my exercises." Logan followed him, assisting with different therapy routines. It was tough work, but he didn't complain. As they worked, Mr. Thompson shared stories of his time in the military, stories of bravery, loss, and resilience. "You see, Logan," he said, pausing between sets, "service isn't about looking strong. It's about doing what's right, even when no one is watching." You don't need a uniform to serve others. You just need the right mindset. Logan absorbed his words. The old him wouldn't have cared, but now he did. Over the next few weeks, Logan continued his work, helping veterans, cleaning, assisting in community programs. He didn't do it for recognition or praise. He did it because it felt right. And with each day, he felt like a different person. Finally, the day of his final hearing arrived. He stood before the judge, his lawyer beside him. The courtroom was filled with people, including Sergeant Harris, Mr. Thompson, and even the royal guard he had wronged. The judge looked at him. Logan Carter, after reviewing your case and your community service, I have decided that you will not face jail time. Instead, your punishment will remain as community service, along with a permanent record of your actions. Do you understand? Logan nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The judge studied him for a moment. I hope you have truly learned from this experience. Logan took a deep breath. I have. As he walked out of the courtroom, he saw the royal guard waiting. For the first time, the guard extended his hand. Logan hesitated, then shook it firmly. You proved something, Logan, the guard said. Don't stop now. Logan smiled. I won't. As he walked away, he realized something. He had come to this country as a reckless, entitled tourist, but he was leaving as a better man. And this time, he was ready to build a future he could be proud of.